Hey guys, it's Tondro coming back at you from an undisclosed location. So, today, I wanted to share some thoughts that I have about America. 250 years, I get it, blah, blah, blah. I'm from one of the original 13 colonies. I grew up very raw America. I don't remember 9/11 that much, but I was like 4 years old when it happened, so yeah. But I remember how like unquestionable it was. You didn't question the military. You did not question the government. And then Snowden happened, and all that went away. And I remember distinctly in school when Snowden happened that there were kids that were straight up like, no, Snowden is a traitor, he's evil, our government can do no wrong, blah, blah, blah. We must all defend and rally around the flag, etc. And I wasn't really one of those kids, but I believed that America could be better than that. I believed that America could bring itself better than that, I believed that America would be able to get better post-Bush, post-Obama, that we would be able to heal from 9/11. I see now that 9/11 gave us what I can only describe as the spiritual equivalent of brain rot. America has no future. Point blank, America has no future. I say this as someone, I didn't join the Army, full disclosure, I'm not ex-military, but I spent a lot of time around people who were in the military. I've spent a lot of time around people who were in the government. I've spent a lot of time talking to the Department of Labor. I've spent a lot of time talking to people who've worked in the actual Department of Education. Our country has no future. Our country is just bureaucracy, labeled on bureaucracy, labeled just layered on top. And it's a case of not necessarily that all these different organs are not talking to each other. It's that all these different forms of bureaucracy are not moving together. That and there are systemic issues that are being ignored that are just rotting slowly. Think of a society like a living organism. If a monkey has an infected finger, that infection is going to grow to the rest of the hand, and then the rest of the arm, and then the whole body. And then the monkey passes away. In America, our social rot, I think, honestly, my opinion, it started with Vietnam. We were desperate to get involved and to stop the evil communism, whatever, because the corporations owned us post World War II. In my opinion, I think the Reds under the bed scare of McCarthy was kind of the initial bite of the infection, and then that slowly rotted away into Vietnam, which was the finger getting infected, and the hand being infected was Reagan. I would go so far as to say Ronald Reagan's administration and him getting into the White House was a successful version of the business plot. Because ever since Reagan, corporations have had more power than the government, quite frankly. I would say the infection spreading to the whole arm and probably even to the body, to the chest, was 9/11, followed by the forever war in Afghanistan. I am a firm believer that America, much like the Soviet Union after invading Afghanistan, will collapse. Because America is a lot more stronger, and the average American citizen is a lot more docile, a lot more fat and satiated by the internet and by TV and by cars and whatnot, and the ability to take a warm shower, I am pretty sure that if there ever is a revolution in the United States, it will probably be in the 2030s. I would go so far as to say America will not exist past 2033. I don't see a future for this country. And if America does exist in 2033, it will be a completely different country. America seems to be a different country every like 5 years. I'll put it to you this way. This is a different reality compared to 2021. And 2021 was a different reality compared to 2019. Every couple of years, you're just living in an entirely new country. So it's just like, what the fuck is the point, you know? Another major issue, going back to the idea of rot and the rot just being everywhere, forget police militarization and how militarized police are, and how militarized they've become, and how powerful ICE as a organization has become over the years. Forget all that. Forget how the Epstein files and the Panama Papers came out, and years later, not a single person has been arrested. Apart from like Glizzy Maxwell or whatever her name is, no one's been arrested. You know, Trump hasn't testified in front of Congress about what his role is with with Epstein. Let's ignore the fact that Trump rules through a cult of personality and a cult of fear. Let's forget the people who genuinely want him to run for a third term, for a fourth term, for him to be president for life, to elect him as king, which is completely unconstitutional. Forget how he wants, you know, forget all of it. Forget all of it. Let's look at something as simple as education. Literacy has gone down. What do you think is going to happen in 10 years when the guy who is manning your power plant can't read? What happens when they can't hire anyone for that power plant because no one can read? Better yet, forget all that. What about technology? What happens when everyone has AI psychosis? What happens if 10%, a good example of this is a thought experiment I actually came up with. 10% of the world is Buddhist. Pretty decent religion. That's millions of people. So I have a hypothesis, and I'm pretty sure AI will impact everything, including religion. And I'm pretty sure there's already AI cults, and I'm pretty sure at some point we will see an AI cult-related mass unaliving. But let's say, for the sake of argument, you take something from the internet that has a bit of a cultural folklore to it. There's a bit of an idea called the NPC theory. And there are people who genuinely believe that we live in a simulation, and that some people are just NPCs, that they have no free will, regardless of whether or not we're in a simulation, regardless of whether or not we're NPCs or I'm an NPC, whatever. I personally don't believe I am, because how many people do you know who have like hand tattoos and lives a crazy life as me, you know? I have very like weird esoteric tattoos as well, so. But let's say, for the sake of argument, 10% of the world, be it immediately or be it over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, maybe even 20 years. Let's push it off to even 30 years. Let's say 30 years from now, 10% of the world believes that we are in a simulation, and that a certain number, an unquantified number of people are NPCs. The ramifications societally would be astronomical. You would see religion completely fall apart. You would see social trust completely fall apart. You would see crime beyond what you can comprehend. You would see people treating service worker. No one would want to be a service worker. You would see the service industry and the hospitality industry completely collapse. You would see, perhaps even in some places, roaming bands of thugs just randomly testing people to see if they're NPCs or not. those weird man on the street meta glasses, TikToks where some random runs up to you with a microphone and asks you some weird question, that would be daily for people. It would be on par with to have a mass psychosis like that would be if all of a sudden half the people in China became Falun Gong cultists. And that's another thing too. What is going to happen to society? Maybe not when or if, but should we ever have a world where a certain segment of the population is essentially just a bunch of schizophrenics? I mean, look at the flat Earth thing. You're gonna sit there and tell me that QAnon and the flat Earth stuff isn't mass psychosis? And the thing is too is I've actually studied cults and movements and things like that. Forget Jonestown. What happens when an entire country? What happens when there's a Jonestown that has access to the internet and it's scattered all across the globe? What happens when there's a Jonestown that has access to air support? Better yet, what happens if it's not even Jonestown? What if it's more like forget Jonestown or Heaven's Gate? What happens if it's more like Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge? Because it can be completely political. People all the time say, oh, the right-wingers are all NPCs and all have the same talking points. And then the people on the right are going to say, oh, all the leftists are they're all NPCs. They all have the same talking points, yada, yada. Not only that, there are cults. There's this one cult from, I want to say it was from French Polynesia. I can't remember. I want to say it was Fiji or something. There was a cult on an island somewhere. And I don't remember if it was Christian in origin or what. But they all developed this weird belief system that some people were demons. And they just en masse removed their friends, their family, whatever. They just en masse started murdering each other. Same thing too with Eastern Lightning. Eastern Lightning is a cult from China that believes that some people quite literally are demons. What happens when we have Eastern Lightning, but they are everywhere? What happens when we have Eastern Lightning, but one of their highest ranking commanders is a mayor in a city somewhere? Or a sheriff? Going back to QAnon, I have two things to say about QAnon. One, there are cops, some of whom SWAT, some of whom even are sheriffs and high-ranking police officials, that are QAnoners. The president is a QAnoner. So, what happens when we have a cult in power? Well, North Korea, you can make the very strong argument that North Korea is a cult. There might be in America one day where we have a North Korea-style DMZ on both sides of our borders. I don't think that day will ever happen because our border is very undefended. I think if there ever is an American Civil War, Canada and Mexico would immediately fall. Immediately. Chaos. Chaos all around us. But I will say this. QAnon, and this is how I'm going to connect it to today. Long ago, as Native Americans were being just massacred, they were being genocided off the face of this continent. But they survived. They're still here. When they were facing genocide, they came up with Ghost Dance, a movement where it was basically, I hate to boil it down so much, and any Native Americans watching this can correct me, but it was essentially boiled down to, if we dance hard enough and pray hard enough, the Great Spirit will remove the white men. The white men will go away, the buffaloes will come back. And everything will be peace on earth, utopia. And I see a lot of parallels between QAnon and Ghost Dance. It's Ghost Dance for white people. It's Ghost Dance for boomer Norman Rockwell painting the old guard America. It is, perhaps, I dare say, ghost dance for whiteness. There will still be people who look like me 100 years from now, yes. Blonde hair, whatever. But they probably won't call themselves white. They will probably refer to themselves as just humans. Be it because climate change is killing everyone indiscriminately, or because they're zombies, whatever. But people will drop the race thing. When all of humanity is at stake, we will easily drop the race thing. Either that or we all go extinct. And if there's an alien watching this and, the last human on Earth died, oh well. Congratulations, you've won the natural selection lottery, I suppose. But when it comes to ghost dance, a lot of it later on inspired, to an extent, the Red Power movement and fights for liberation. And I am pretty sure, well, one, obviously, I'm pretty sure that when Trump dies, they will absolutely start a religion off of him, and it will be like Mormonism 2.0. Mormonism 2.0, fat orange sociopath edition. But I am pretty sure that when the last boomer is gone, when the last of this Norman Rockwell shit is over, when the last of the red hats are gone, and again, going back to ghost dance, MAGA is a lot like ghost dance, and QAnon's a lot like ghost dance, because it's a case of they pray really hard to their savior, Donald Trump, and they want the jobs to come back, the economic pie-in-the-sky prosperity to come back, i.e. the buffalo, and they want the migrants to go away. I think in the future, we will see a world that is so radically different from us that we will consider it quite alien. Whether or not it's a dystopia or utopia, I don't know. Maybe it won't be either. But I'm pretty sure that when the dust settles, when America, I don't think America is going to be here in the year 2040, and if it is, it will be so completely different, it'll be unrecognizable. America, when the dust settles, people will think, yeah, it's about fucking time. I don't know what will replace it. I would like to believe that what will replace America will be something inspired by what the founding fathers, especially Thomas Paine, thought of. That we care about the general welfare of our society, including but not limited to equal rights regardless of what gender you are, equal rights regardless of whether or not you're trans or cis, equal rights regardless of your color, whatever, freedom of religion. You not just get freedom of, to keep and bear arms, but also to keep food, water, shelter, access to healthcare, access to the internet, etc. Technology would be mandated to be used for the betterment of mankind and not for the benefit of state corporations, etc. Perhaps in an alternate timeline, we would have gotten social media that was literally designed from the ground up to bring people together rather than just have us all hating each other. I would go so far as to say, if there is social media in 100 years from now, I am pretty sure that we would have mastered it. Either that or we get rid of social media. Maybe in 100 years, YouTube is gone and people look back at the internet and think, what the hell were they thinking? Didn't they know that it was going to, lead to, it would be the social equivalent, it would be the societal equivalent of smoking a pack a day? Maybe. If all this is nothing, then oh well, it's all for nothing. Hey, you know what? At least I tried. If I'm ever remembered by history, they cannot say that I did not try. But that's all I have to say. I think when the dust settles, the U.S. has no future. At some point it will collapse, but when the dust settles, we'll be better off for it. We will be a lot more free. We'll be a lot more happy. We will live in a world where everyone gets a house. We won't need cars anymore. We might not even need social media because our neighbors get along with us just as well and we all look out after each other. It'll be a nice solar punk future where we all use kinetic energy and solar and wind energy and bicycles and heat energy and hydrodynamic energy in order to keep the lights on. And I think we'll be better off for it. But I think things are going to get a lot more worse than they are now. I think one day we're going to wake up in an America where people are not going to be smart enough to know how to keep the lights on. And we will see rolling blackouts. Our power grid will fail. Education will fall first, followed by a collapse of labor, followed by a collapse of the actual energy grid. And America and the rest of the world is so reliant on fossil fuels that the moment energy and labor collapse, fossil fuels will fall shortly after. And the moment you have that, everything else falls. Agriculture fails, logistics fail, transportation fails, defense fails, everything fails. Because 90% of this world that we live in currently revolves around fossil fuels. The moment we have people so uneducated that they can't keep that system running, and you no longer have workers who are smart enough to get propane or diesel or gasoline or oil or natural gas or coal from point A to point B, that is the moment there is no more America. The moment that happens, there is no more United States. The same thing with the whole Civil War, Boogaloo, whatever. I personally don't believe it's ever going to happen, and if it does, it'll be more like the Years of Lead. There will still be in America, but it will be like very culturally different. I think, honestly, if there ever is the big igloo, if there ever is a CW Part 2, it will look more like the Troubles or something, and it will be very haphazard, and it will be induced more by climate change than anything. It'll have nothing to do with MAGA. And the moment it starts, like it really starts, there will be no more there will be no more America. The moment there's a second time around, there's no salvaging the Union. I also believe that I have good reason to believe that the Union, the moment a big igloo happens, that will affect logistics, which will affect the fossil fuels. And again, once the fossil fuels infrastructure is starting to collapse or crumble or even shake a little bit, forget it. It's over. The same goes for AI. Same goes for AI. Moment that bubble pops, I think it's going to be over. I think there's going to be some sort of 3 Mile Island scenario involving AI that flatlines the U.S. economy, and we have to start from ground zero, basically. I don't really like doing these kind of doomsayer stuff, but this is just what I'm seeing coming around the corner, based on someone who majored in philosophy, who has studied cults, who has studied religion, who has studied history, who has studied, and more studied. Unlike What If Alt Hist, I actually read a book, and not only that, I'm not schizophrenic like he is, not to be ableist, but I don't, I'm not, Odin isn't telling me these things. But between climate change and the ramifications thereof, because again, none of this is isolated, these things will feed back into each other. With climate change creating roughly 1.5 billion refugees, do you really think all these first world countries, do you really think the US, Japan, Australia, Canada, Russia, China, do you really think they're going to accept 1 billion people from India, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia, Tanzania, Central African Republic, Somalia, South Africa, Brazil, Portugal, whatever? Do you really think we're going? Do you really think America, the infrastructure as it stands currently, is going to be able to withstand that kind of strain of refugees? It will make like the refugee crisis of 2015. It'll be 10 times that. It will be incomprehensibly larger than that. Forget the, citizen vigilante slop, whatever. No. You will wake up one day, and your new neighbors, for good or for ill, you will wake up one day and you will probably have literal planes of people coming here. And they will be, and the thing is too, is nowhere is safe from climate change. They could be people it could be 20 dudes from India moving next door to you and living in the apartment next door to you, or it could be, 3 different families living in a tent city and they're all like Icelanders or some shit. It very well could be that, and I think that's how it's going to play out, unfortunately. You're going to wake up one day and a bunch of Californians and Wyoming, people from Wyoming and California are going to be camping out on your front lawn in tents. And next to them, there will be someone from Portugal, and then next to the Portuguese guy, there will be someone from Germany, and who was displaced by a flood, and the other refugee next to him is probably from Morocco, and so on and so on. But honestly, if the proletariat got like that, if we were at the point where it didn't matter what color we are or nationality we are, and we're all living in tents, then Marx would be 100% right when he said, we have nothing to lose but our chains. And I can easily see a Marx-like figure coming up out of that kind of poverty and saying, okay, we literally have nothing to lose. We are, 1.5 billion people from, 203 different countries speaking, close to 105 different languages. What's stopping us from knocking on Elon Musk's house? What's stopping us from just building our own country? That's another thing too. I can easily see that too. I can easily see it where the millions of immigrants living in America decide enough is enough, and they leave and they go to their own. They go do their own thing. If every non-U.S. citizen living in the U.S. right now decided to drop whatever they're doing and go build a new city somewhere, they all went to like Portland, or Seattle, and they declared the independent city-state of Seattle, they'd probably, at least for a little bit, get away with it. They would at least put quite the scare to Uncle Sam. Same thing too with climate change insofar as lethality. What happens when there's no more doctors because all of them are either busy or underwater because Miami flooded? What happens when DC floods? Where are we going to put the U.S. Capitol then? What happens when the one person who knows how to build, who knows how to make Coca-Cola, whatever? What happens when they are killed in a wildfire or displaced by a wildfire? Like, think about that for a second. Think about how many scientists, doctors, farmers, engineers, mechanics, poets, midwives, children, elderly, infants, pregnant women, that we will lose. Soldiers, doctors, special forces, that we will lose because of climate change. Between now and 2050, it's like what? One anywhere from like 1 billion, and like the higher end I saw was like 4 billion. 4 billion people, that's half the world's population. Better yet, this is your homework assignment for when you're done watching this video. Comment below what happens. Here's your homework assignment. Write a list of 10 people you know and include yourself. So 9 people and then yourself. And then gauge from there how many of them, assuming no natural causes or any weird hiccups, it's preferably, let's say, people under 50. How many of those people under 50 are still going to be here in the year 2050? Cut them all out if they have a disability and need meds daily. I have several good friends that need their daily medication. And not to beat a dead horse, but the Boogaloo, What makes you think the Boogaloo is going to be anything pretty? It's not. The one thing, I actually told this to a Boogaloo boy at a protest. I tell him, you should not call yourself that. That is the most fed nonsense ever. You should be warning people to not boog. Do you know why? Because the moment there is a big igloo, the moment there is a CW2 electric Boogaloo in the United States, yeah, that 10-year-old with diabetes who's poor and lives in somewhere in Alabama who's rationing his insulin, the moment there is a Boogaloo, he's not going to get his insulin. He's going to go night-night. He's going to go to sleep one night and not wake up. Same thing too with the grandma that needs her ibuprofen. Oh, no blood thinners for grandma? That's it. What about that pregnant woman up the street from you? You really think she's going to leave the house to go to the hospital to deliver her kid safely if there's landmines everywhere? Nuh-uh. Like, that's the thing, like I didn't even serve, but I've seen so much footage, especially like during the fall of like Daesh and like the Battle of Mosul and whatnot. I saw all that. Because at the time I was an 8-channer. I have seen some shit that you couldn't comprehend. I've seen like the earliest of drone footage from like Libya and like in Syria and Iraq. I've seen, and I'm talking like the PFV drones that can just tear somebody apart. And to me, that's scary, because now like you can't fight that. If 1,000 bees that can, that are laced with Syntex can find you at any given moment, that's not war anymore. That's just slaughter. And people are just not prepared for that. Me personally, I don't think you can prepare for that. That's why I'm as prepared as I can be. And if I'm not prepared enough, if I don't live to see 2050, oh well. But hey, hopefully this video finds you well in the year 2050, for whoever might be watching this. Anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your years. Stay safe and have fun. That's about all. Peace out.